Paul Hunker is a partner in a Dallas law firm specializing in immigration law. He also served as the chief counsel for U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement in Dallas for more than 20 years. And JD Long Garcia is senior editor at America Magazine. He has spent years reporting and writing extensively on the immigration issue. Welcome back to you both. JD, let's start with you. The narrative around crime and national security, which Americans supported in the election in November. How does the church work to bring compassion and dignity into this debate, knowing a lot of Catholics voted in this direction?
Yeah, I think that first of all, it starts with telling the truth. I think that a lot of the ways that immigrants are characterized is simply not descriptive of who we are. I'm an immigrant myself. My mother's an immigrant. I've interviewed immigrants for the last 20 years, and the way that they're characterized as villains, as criminals, it just doesn't fit the truth of who they are. The people that are coming to this country really are looking to provide for their families, and I think Catholics especially can understand that. We have families, we care for our children, we want to do what's best for them. And that's who these people are. So I think that the church needs to insist on the truth. And I don't think that that's what we're hearing from this administration at all.
Well, Paul, critics argue that using the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to expedite deportations bypasses due process. What's your perspective on this strategy, and how does it align with or diverge from the historical way that legal precedents have been used?
Thanks, Monse. The administration is taking a super aggressive view of what constitutes an invasion. And that allows the government to arrest Venezuelans with almost no due process. It's a very dangerous theory. I expect the Supreme Court will institute constitutional guardrails on the Alien Enemies Act, or find guardrails in the Alien Enemies Act to limit the power. And that's a good thing, because that will limit the power of future presidents as well.
Well, JD, you just talked about this idea that we are kind of stereotyping people. What is your response to those who argue that the executive orders and policies are legally valid, even if they're morally objectionable? Should moral teachings influence legal interpretations?
Yeah, in terms of like what I think that the problem is, I think we can agree that the immigration system is broken. I think that the laws that exist right now are out of date, and they're not doing what they were created to do. So like in terms of legal interpretation, that's one thing, but we really are asking the courts to do too much, I think. What we need to be asking for is the legislative branch, right? The people that are supposed to be making the laws, to make laws that are a lot more clear on this. Instead, we're using laws that are very, very old, that weren't intended for this current situation. And that's why we have a body that's supposed to be putting forward laws that actually deal with the moment, that deal with our current situation. Like our founders, or people even 100 years ago, didn't anticipate the current situation with immigration in this country. And so our lawmakers have failed us in terms of not passing the laws that we need today.
Paul, you were on the side of the government for many years. Do you agree with that?
Definitely need reform in our immigration law. The law is broken, and we need some serious reform.
Well, Paul, I want to stay with you just on this issue of the 14th Amendment. It's significant here. How do you interpret the legal foundation for the executive order to end birthright citizenship? Do you think that the administration's interpretation will hold up with the Supreme Court or other challenges?
When I read the executive order the first time, I thought to myself, how to write an executive order that's 100% illegal? Look, and over 125 years ago in Wong Kim Ark, the Supreme Court found that a Chinese citizen born of Chinese parents in the United States is a citizen of the United States under the 14th Amendment because he's subject to our laws. So that's not going to change. I don't even think the Supreme Court will get to this, because I don't think any circuit court, any lower court, is going to find that the executive order is legal.
So you really don't think that the challenge will go up at all?
Not to the Supreme Court. It could, but I doubt it.
Now, JD, on these issues specifically, you've seen the church respond, the U.S. bishops, even the Holy Father weighing in on these policies. How should the church engage with government officials and legal systems to advocate for humane immigration policies? What does that look like?
Well, I mentioned at the beginning to tell the truth, but also I think that we need to continue to engage and we need to not back down. I think this is a moment for the church to truly be prophetic and standing up for the dignity of every individual. There's a tendency these days to paint immigrants with a broad brush. And to characterize them in one particular way, when what we're talking about are individual human beings. And so, like, I think that the church needs to stand up and tell the stories of these people who are here, who have contributed to our country oftentimes for decades, who've made their life here, who are part of our communities, they're our neighbors, they're our brothers and sisters, truly. So I think that the church needs to talk about it, to provide that counter narrative of who these people really are.
Now, Paul, you've been on this side of these debates and you've seen how the church responds one way or another. The storytelling that JD is talking about, is there more that the church can do? Is there more that a bishop could actually do to counter some of these issues?
Good question. My bishop, Bishop Burns, has an immigration task force to help the many non-citizens that are part of his flock. And education is really important, that people understand their rights, they understand their risks. There can be undue fear. People can fear driving to church or driving to the grocery store, and in most cases, those fears are unfounded. So I think it's important to really share information about the legal rights that non-citizens have.
Now, knowing that we do have audience members who are watching from all over the world who might be in those situations of fear, what would you say to them about those unfounded fears? What is legitimate and what isn't?
Well, the government is still generally focusing on people that have criminal history. They have expanded out to people that have been here a long time and don't have any criminal history. I think people should avoid driving if they don't have a driver's license. Some people can't do that. That often gets people in trouble. I think if people have unpaid tickets and things like that, they need to pay off those tickets. Non-citizens can get arrested on warrants if they have unpaid tickets. So I think people trying to get themselves right with the local law can reduce the risk of coming under the ICE radar.
That's good advice. Well, a question for both of you on this 14th Amendment discussion that we really didn't get into. JD, we've seen the church advocate for immigration policies as pro-life. Would advocating for the 14th Amendment to also protect life in the womb be a place for coherent application of church teaching, be an opportunity for the church?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, the 14th Amendment, of course, it came up also in terms of recently in the discussions about insurrection as well, right? I mean, I'm not sure if that's exactly the right place to do it. I tend to think that we need something new. But the church, in terms of making that connection between the dignity of the human person from conception until natural death, and including immigrants, I think that that's very important to make that distinction. And those of us who are very sympathetic to that point of view, to the pro-life movement, have to really call on our politicians who claim to be pro-life to actually carry that forward, and so that we can see some laws that do recognize that dignity of the human person, and not, for example, promote in vitro fertilization, which is against church teaching. So I think we really have to hold our politicians' feet to the fire when it comes to upholding human dignity from the beginning to the end.
Now, Paul, is that too much of a stretch when you think about the idea that if it's a fetus, if it's a throwaway, it doesn't actually have the benefit of the right of citizenship? But can you extend protection to life in the womb through the 14th Amendment?
Sure, through the citizenship part of the 14th Amendment, you can do that. I know some scholars have said that unborn children may be protected under the Equal Protection Clause. I think there's a fair amount of debate on that. For example, I think Justice Scalia, who's pro-life, personally, I'm sure, didn't think that the Equal Protection Clause would protect unborn life, but some legal scholars do.
It's an interesting debate and one we haven't seen too often. Well, JD, let's go back to this pastoral reality around how we look at immigration. How does Catholic teaching on immigration, particularly this call to welcome the stranger, inform your response to recent executive actions on birthright citizenship and deportations?
Yeah, I mean, they don't mix, right? I mean, I think it's very clear in the gospel what our response as Catholics is meant to be. We see our brothers and sisters who are very fearful, as Paul said. People are afraid. Even people who are currently protected are afraid. I interviewed some DACA recipients recently who don't know what their future is going to be under this administration. They have to do their renewals every 2 years, and they don't know what's going to happen, and they're living in fear. I think that what Paul said and the qualifications that he made about who is most at risk is important, because I think part of the strategy is for people to be afraid. But so as a church, I think our response has to include welcoming these people into our churches and into our lives, so that they know that we're going to stand with them, and hopefully in that way they know that that some of that fear at least can subside.
Paul, I'll give you the last word. The Catholic Church has framed these policies as morally troubling, particularly regarding human dignity and due process. How would you respond to concerns that ICE policies can sometimes dehumanize immigrants? Is there any reason that they would turn and look at the moral aspect of this rather than just the legal one?
As a former ICE lawyer, Monse, I always like to defend ICE, and the administration is imposing these standards on ICE. And I think a couple examples are the removal of Venezuelans to very, very tough prisons in Salvador. Innocent people have been removed who aren't gang members to a prison that has nothing to do with them. I think going after people that have been here for many, many years, that has huge effects on those persons, their families, communities. It's really hurting our society to remove people that have been here a long time and have established ties. And I wish the administration would focus ICE on removing people that are dangerous to the country.
Well, this has been a great discussion. Thank you both. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Monse.